And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Tuesday morning's OTB AM. It's definitely Tuesday morning. Owen, how are you?
Very well. How are you?
I'm very well. There was a pall of, I would say, despair generally over the office yesterday as people kind of recovered slowly from the weekend. You didn't notice this?
I didn't notice that at all, no.
I'd say there was like not much productivity generally around the building yesterday.
Right, that's very interesting. Why was that?
Well, because the Emeralds were on at the weekend. And then 98 FM, who won Station of the Year, were all celebrating last night. So it'll be interesting to see what state Darren is in today as well.
Oh, yeah, very good point. I would say Darren, of course, Sports Broadcaster of the Year, probably had a separate kind of VIP section within the winners' enclosure that is the 98 FM after party yesterday. So, yeah, that's going to be that's the thing I'm most looking forward to.
Do you roll over today for? That's kind of, no.
Of course not. What do you mean? I never roll over. That's what I say.
The big news from last night was that Peter Keane is the new Kerry manager. Is this like is this exactly what Kerry should be doing? Is the Kerry Mafia happy?
Yes, I would say. I would say that as soon as Peter Keane's name was in the hat, which it was automatically.
Just in case people are unaware, Eoin is part of the Kerry Mafia. There's a self-appointed group of Kerry fans who travel the country to all the home games, all the away games. Mostly living in Dublin now. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're
and like we accept that we're not the biggest Kerry fans. We won't claim to be. Just because we go to all the games doesn't mean we're the best Kerry fans. It's because we're based in Dublin and it's easier for us to go to games.
Yeah, but you are definitely the self-appointed Kerry Mafia, you know.
And very self-important.
Yeah, and you police how the opposition talks about your players. You police sometimes how your own fans talk about your players.
Of course.
You're generally kind of the thought leaders when it comes to slights against Kerry in the media, Kerry being the greatest team of the noughties, and other important Kerry-related aspects.
And the golden era still being the greatest team of all time.
Yeah, Seamus Darby basically being an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. That is certainly our modus operandus, as you listed there.
So the Kerry Mafia, just so that the explainer is done, are happy with the new Kerry management setup.
Yeah, the deity will be satisfied with what we've seen so far. The main thing is that Donny Buckley is back in Kerry. That has been something. It's been a thorn in the side really of Kerry over the years. Kind of a sore point that it was like this great strength and conditioning coach was just allowed to go and spread his wings and leave the county and go in with Mayo for a little while and all that sort of stuff. Now he's back, and I think that was a key point in this appointment. Now, Tim Murphy, the county board chairman, has said that there was never any sort of influence put on from the county board on Peter Keane to pick certain players or pick certain people in his backroom team, because I said it myself in the show, there had been some suggestion that might have actually been a reason why Peter Keane wasn't going to get the job. And that
last week it looked like it was Maurice Fitz's to turn down, but Maurice Fitz is actually part of the backroom team anyway, so...
Yeah, and I think that's the ideal situation. I think Maurice Fitzgerald being involved is a good thing. He said there was kind of, again, he hasn't been on the record with all of this, just a suggestion in the papers was that Maurice Fitzgerald was just going to be a little bit too busy with his new role as principal of Closh and Skellige to actually be Kerry manager. I would contend that if you're too busy to be manager, you might be a little bit too busy to be selector, so I'm not sure if I actually believe that report. I would say that maybe he just felt it wasn't the right time for him and he wants to kind of ply his trade a little bit more in the backroom team for a couple of more years, and I think that's the right course of action. There was, of course, just the simple idea that, you know, he's Peter Keane's clubman, so when he said that, you know, he wasn't going to go for Kerry manager, maybe then there was a separate process where Peter Keane says, well, now that you're out of the Kerry fold, why don't you come straight back into the folds with my backroom team? So yeah, it's a strong appointment. He was ratified last night, and I think he's been given a 3-year term, but there's no such thing as a 3-year term down there. It's a 1 year, year-by-year basis, and we'll see how much abuse he gets next year, sort of thing.
How long was he the minor manager for?
He did 3 in a row with the minors. So this year, last year, and the year before. So Jack O'Connor did the first 2. Peter Keane did the following 3.
Okay, and we've seen obviously this work in other counties, most notably the Limerick hurlers who've had success at underage level that has translated to senior level. He's only got 1 year to deliver though to stop the 5 in a row, which ultimately, you know.
That's the thing.
Yeah, you're the manager who let the 5 in a row happen.
Yeah, like, I mean, that was part of the whole new 3-year plan with Eamon Fitzmaurice, was that, you know, the first year you kind of bed it down, the development centre is open, and you start to get a few of these minors through, and then by 2019 then you can make a tilt at Sam Maguire, but that hasn't happened, so there's a new manager in now, and I think that you should always give like a first season as a bedding in process where it doesn't always happen down there, but it never happens down there. And the very reason Ger is holding up his hand with the number 5 on it, that is the reason why there will be no betting in process allowed. But I would say 2020 will be the first year they really challenge for the title. All
right, here's what's coming up on the show today. It's a busy enough show. Cian Lynch is going to join us around about 8:45 this morning. Ross Tucker is going to talk to us at around about 8:30. Mo Farah is now the second fastest marathon runner in the world. and is a shoe-in for a gold medal, according to Brendan Foster in one of the newspapers this morning. I'll bring you the story of that in just a second. Bringing the sports news with Darren. We're going to talk about Irish football around about 8:15. Brian Kerr is going to give us his thoughts. The good news coming through is that the other teams aren't as good as we thought they were for various reasons this week. And right now, we're going to bring you to the sports pages.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
It's got to be pretty grim when the newspaper's biggest reports and most exciting reports ahead of an international weekend is that Eriksson and Bale aren't playing. It's
There's something sad about that.
That is grim. The expectations are, as opposed to us like, ooh, we've got like world-class player against their world-class player. It's a Clash of the Titans, celebrity death match. Remember the celebrity death match?
Yeah, but like we do have a world-class player in Matt Doherty, Ger. Well, okay, maybe he's not world-class, but he's world-class to me. And maybe we can play up that a little bit more. And he is being played up across the papers this morning. But it is important news that Christian Eriksen and Gareth Bale
It is. It's just that, like, it's the most exciting thing going is that the games are going to be played by their mediocre team against our mediocre team, and let's go.
Yeah, like I would suggest Wales maybe are a tad better than a mediocre team, or are a good team in weight even without Gareth Bale, and they still haven't reached their full potential.
Semi-final of the European Championships, not their full potential? That's their full potential. That's as good as it gets.
Well, I mean, in terms of the group of youngsters that we saw destroy us.
Ampadu
and David Brooks.
So here is the front of the Irish Examiner this morning, and it's here, Shepherd strikes as City bounce back to set up Dundalk Cup final date. An amazing goal in that game last night that brought us back into it from Morris. They were 2-0 down. He strikes from 40 yards, gets the ball in the centre circle, pings it forward, and then goes, yeah, I'm going to have a lash. And it was such a good goal that his own teammates continued to play on going, was that a goal? I don't know. Did that go in?
Yeah, that really killed it for me. If it hit the back of the net, or like it had like made some sort of rippling of the net, it would have been a far more satisfying goal to watch. I'm sure he was I'm sure you look back at that goal as the best goal he'll score in his career, or one of the best goals he'll score in his career.
You think it got ruined aesthetically by the fact that it...
Totally.
No, they're like...
If it's got to take a couple of seconds for everybody to be like, oh, what's going to happen here? Is it a goal? Is it not a goal? Did it cross the line? I think that destroys it in terms of the satisfaction you get from seeing a goal like that. Fight
Club. McGinley fears one-punch fatality if GAA violence is not halted. So this is Enda McGinley has spoken here. You've been going through that.
He's kind of speaking to a couple of the papers actually this morning. He says that everyone's heard of the one-punch fatalities, and there are shocking incidences. All you got to do is catch one person correctly and you can do massive damage. So I think that's fairly common sense. But like, he makes the very valid point here that nowadays with boys having 8, 9 or 10 years of strength training behind themselves, the power in those punches is much greater than before if they're being thrown with intent. And the one area that never gets any stronger is your face and bones, your skull and brains. A weight program has no impact on those structures, and yet you were hitting them at greater force than ever before, which is a very valid point. He is, of course, like a clinical specialist physio in a trauma and orthopaedics ward in Craigavon Hospital. So he does speak with an element of expertise. You do kind of forget that. It's like you get yourself big and bulky, your brain is still your brain. It's never going to be protected. It's kind of a grim thing to think about, and he does point out that these things kind of like change in a split second, that like... We've kind of come down hard on a lot of these people over the last couple of weeks, but ultimately these are split-second decisions that in a lot of cases aren't representative of the actual character of the people trying to punch, and they will ultimately regret what they do.
I don't know. I think that somewhere inside you is the ability to throw a punch. If the ability to throw a punch is inside you.
But there are, ultimately he talks about the huge regret that can be left behind and stuff like that.
But if you kill somebody from a one punch, of course you're going to,
what if you put someone into a coma, he asks, leaves somebody brain damage, takes somebody's sight? You see plenty of people worse off in hospital who are left. I've seen them with head injuries up in hospital, and these are normal people, same as you and me, and you see them then in the hospital with a bad brain injury. What a sentence for family and everything. It's an ominous warning. I don't think he's being over the top here at all. I think that we are really kind of near the end of a tether here where something terrible is going to happen, and the only way to actually prevent something terrible happening is, as I think Darren was saying on the show yesterday, is just blanket bans for a lot of these instances.
Yeah, because then the clubs start having meetings saying, look, we need to calm these young lads down, and everybody takes responsibility for it, and it's a collective decision not to be involved in this kind of stuff. And that's it. So the Irish Times, Sean Maguire looks like he's going to be fit to play part in some of the games coming up over the weekend. And And then Irish players need to look beyond England. So Ruud Doctor is out doing media with various people saying that we've improved the number of players who are coming through the youth system who are playing on the underage international teams. I think there was 17 on one of the under 15 teams, and maybe it was 13 on one of the under 19 teams who are playing in Ireland. And if we're relying on the English system, there was a great stat from our last game. Our youngest players were 23-year-old, the two Callums, and Jeff Hendrick was the last player to come through the system. Is he 25 or 26?
26.
He's 26 on that team. And of course, Ryan Giggs had 3 teenagers on the team that annihilated us.
Yeah, it was depressing. Like, Doctor is kind of making the point that we don't need to look at England as kind of the leader in sort of a place where we can nurture talent and grow, because ultimately the way we currently are in Ireland, it's hard to make that full development while still basing yourself in Ireland if you want to get to the very, very top level. So he talks about potentially going to the Netherlands, going to even like a country like Denmark to play our club football, that we shouldn't just be looking across the Irish Sea. He talks about Jack Byrne, who went to Canberra in the Netherlands, and he reckons that Jack Byrne's career would be in a better place. He's not writing off his career, and I don't think anybody should be writing off his career. He might be just going through a tough period at the moment. But if he had stayed in the Netherlands for a little bit longer, his progression might have happened a little bit quicker. He says that naturally, if you go from a country like that to a top team like Manchester City, like Byrne did, you suddenly become a loanee. You get farmed out to different clubs, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but as a young player, you are trying to get used to a different system every single season. Whereas if you just stick with one club, you get used to the system, and that isn't playing on your mind as much. The development can then happen a little bit more organically. So it's an interesting point. We do have, like you talk about Ryan Johansson at the moment, who's playing in the Bundesliga with Bayern Munich, or is part of the Bayern Munich setup at underage level. That perhaps is kind of a better area to be looking at, continental Europe, rather than just looking at England, and that's where it starts and finishes.
Yeah, Ireland's obsessed with England, but maybe Brexit is actually going to be a good thing for the development of our football culture into the future as players look beyond it. The news is coming through that it looks like Duncan Williams is going to end up starting for Munster at the weekend away at Exeter. Albie Matthewson is injured, didn't train yesterday. Van Gran is saying, well, it's not ideal. I want him to train 2 days. I want him to train Tuesday and Thursday ahead of a Saturday game. But actually, in this instance, if he's okay on Thursday, then we're going to give him as long as we possibly can.
Might have to, because he's been absolutely outstanding, hasn't he? Like, it's interesting the way that's such a huge thing in rugby, isn't it? The whole training for the full week. Like, I know Joe Schmidt would be of that school of thought that you have to train for the full week if you want to be in the starting 15.
Yeah, I'd say
it depends how.
World Cup semi-final, and Sean O'Brien trains on the Thursday before we're playing. He's playing that game.
Yeah, probably.
So I'd say also like Johnny Sexton and
Tag Furlong,
Conor Murray. They're all starting.
Yeah, maybe not Sean O'Brien, given the depth we have in the position, but in the Munster situation, Albie Matthewson definitely falls into that category, given how good he's been the last couple of games.
Okay, so the back of the Irish Independent sports section this morning, Ireland boost as Ericsson and Bale set to miss Dublin trips. I mean, it is obviously a massive boost that their good players, their best players, aren't playing. The Danish coach is saying that Christian Eriksen's issue might be chronic.
Yeah,
like
chronic stomach problem. That's quite worrying.
Yeah, if I'm the Tottenham hierarchy, particularly if I'm Pochettino, I'm like, shut up.
Yeah,
don't say nothing. But no, I'm the Denmark manager. I'm going to blah 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 blah. I want to be all over the tabloids in America.
Unless you're in the Tottenham hierarchy and you're like, yep, speak up, Ugo Harida. And then you sit down to negotiate Christian Eriksen's big contract next year, and it's like, you've got chronic stomach problems, mate. You are not getting 300 grand a week.
Oh yeah, good point. Keane confirmed in Kerry as Cody stays on for a 21st year. So Brian Cody's backroom team is going to be the same backroom team that he had this year. James McGarry, Derek Ling and Michael Dempsey will serve as trainer. And that is an interesting backroom team that Peter Keane has put together.
Yeah, it certainly is. He's got James Foley from Kilcoman, he's got Tommy Griffin, and as you say, Maurice Fitzgerald and Donny Buckley as well. So it's exciting times. I just love a new manager. It's like, I'm sure people in Mayo are feeling the same way as well, having James Horn back. It's just a new opportunity.
In fairness to Keith Earls, he's doing his best to bring back the Ulster-Munster rivalry.
Well, there was 50,000 people at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday night, sure.
A lot of them apparently were at the bar. Everybody's complaining about the match being so stop-start that people went and were drinking for like large swathes of the second half.
I wouldn't be surprised, because I went to get a pint at half-time, and it was kind of like near the end. The teams were just about to come back on by the time I actually got into the bar area, and there was just queues everywhere as the second half was about to start, and I was like, what are people doing?
Well, can I just make a suggestion that they bring the beers that they bring people down with beers with fresh, like here's your beer. Would you like a beer at the seats?
American style.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Why not? Like, what's wrong with this? It's exactly the perfect scenario.
Well, like you are allowed to bring your pint out to your seat, so why not just get someone to do it?
Yeah. There's like, your seat has a number. There's an app. I'll have this, and this. Someone comes and brings you exactly what you want.
Yeah, it's very futuristic. Well, it's actually quite current, isn't it, in American sports?
Yeah.
Did he do that in the Eagle Stadium the other day?
They didn't need to, because they just kept coming. Like, people went down and got drinks, and then were like, hang on a second, they're coming. And they've got everything they've got downstairs. Anyway, sorry. Keith Earls is doing his best. A one-man effort to try and restore this rivalry. Obviously, it was a split-second decision. He talks about his yellow card, where he wrestles James Lowe to the ground.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Preventing the opportunity of the try being scored. I do come in contact with him, but he's a big enough lad. I didn't think he would go down that easy. But look, if you go by the letter of the law, yeah, probably is a yellow card. But penalty try, I don't think so. Whether I was going to hold him up or the ball was going away from him, he was reaching, but that's the decision the referee made. James
Lowe must be so pissing off to play against. He must be like the best player to have on your side, but so pissing off to play against. It's just that bloody smile. Whenever anything goes wrong for Munster the other night, he's just smiling in their faces, rubbing it in a little bit. And it's great to see a player smiling when they're playing rugby. If they're on your team, if they're on the other team, you're just like, shut that smile. Stop smiling. I mean, that's basically accusing him of diving, though, right? He went down too easy, like a sack of spuds, basically. He's like, so there was a sniper in the crowd who got you. Anyway, so no harm. There was a little bit of afters at various situations, so the players clearly feel that tension. And fair play to them. I didn't realise Lowe was such a red rag to the Munster crowd until Keith Wood was talking about hating him as a player, but obviously loving him as a player as well. It's like, all right. Was he saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I would say that, like, I'm kind of being a bit facetious there when I say I kind of hate him. I think he's fantastic for rugby. I think the more players we have kind of expressing character, and I don't mean expressing character the way he plays rugby, I mean expressing character kind of when the play breaks down a little bit, just kind of like taking off red tinted glasses for a moment. I think that's the sort of thing that stokes a rivalry that may be dying in your view. I don't think it's dying, but if there is something dying like that, all you need is a little bit of a fuse like that, and James Lowe provides that.
There was an amazing photograph that I saw yesterday that was like the rugby ball was here and his hand was here, almost as if he lost control of that first try. And like he knocks it on basically in the act of scoring. I'm pretty certain about that. But I don't think the second try that he scored is getting enough credit globally for like
in the second half.
It was amazing.
Outrageous, yeah. It was. Like, how did he not get man of the match as well? I've got another bone I have to pick.
Well, I think the best number 10 on display was playing for Munster. Like,
well, there was there's true never. Like Rossburn was very good.
Yeah, but the best number 10,
like James Lowe was man of the match on Saturday night.
He was, yeah, and Joey Carby was the best number 10 on the show.
Yeah, he probably was.
No, I think like. Anyway, Connacht are going to sell naming rights to the stadium. I think the stadium looks like it could be a really good project for that part of Galway, for a bunch of different sports. Hopefully this is a model into the future about how we do build large-scale infrastructure that is community-based. Mourinho on the drift as he clings on to power. Jose Mourinho looked so sure to be heading out of Old Trafford that bookmakers stopped betting on the next Premier League manager to leave on Saturday. But now he's clinging on to power and drifting in the betting. 6-4 on yesterday. Don't know. Is there anybody else? He was back down to a short of 7-1 on.
Well, like, you look at anybody in the bottom three except for Rafa Benitez. Like, you look at Neil Warnock, you look at David Wagner. Like, are they potential people that their hierarchy, their clubs will get...
Wagner,
they're getting relegated so hard this season, it's not even funny, is that they may as well change the manager at some point. Like, do you play championship football with Neil Warnock and David Wagner next year? Or do you play with a different manager?
Exactly, yeah, what's the difference? Yeah, so you take the risk. Disgruntled racing fans threaten to give up on Longchamp. Huge queues for food, drink, toilets and a place to bet, along with the significant rise in the cost of entry will be among the criticism organisers of the first Arc. We should go to the Arc of Triumph. I don't want to... Not the Arc of Triumph, the Prix de l'Arc.
Yeah, definitely.
That'd be a...
Except that, like, I'm not queuing that long for a pint.
But sure, they'll have an app at that stage. Leinster at full strength for defence. Injury news not so good for Munster and Ulster. It is ridiculous, but this is a great stat. For the first time this season, Leinster have all 27 internationals available for selection as the European champions prepare to defend the crown they won in dramatic fashion last May. Might be the only thing that can derail Leinster is the fact that so many players get fit that they all start getting pissed off with each other. Because when everybody's injured, it's like, oh, I'm in the team, I'm going to get my opportunity to play here. You play 15 games, you get injured. Somebody else comes in and it's like, oh, this all worked out perfectly. But now it'll be like, uh-oh, we've got 12 back rows, all of whom could play for the Lions. It's like, what do we do now? And then Buckley lured back to Kerry is the way that they're reporting on that. And the big news, which we haven't spoken about at all, Kenny Cunningham has emerged as a prime contender to fill the managerial vacancy at League of Ireland club St. Pat's. Not a single mention. Too busy with the old bait and switch. I'm going to talk about fried bread, and you guys aren't going to do any journalism. We're sitting here not doing any journalism, just talking to Kenny about food instead of going, what?
Kenny's food discussions are a cover for his secret operation, which is get me the St. Pat's job.
Pat Fenlon and Paul Doolan are the other two candidates. Club officials have met all three in the last week. And the other two obviously won titles in the past, but Kenny would be the wild card choice. And I mean, I think Kenny is destined to be a manager.
Yeah, he'd be a fantastic manager. I do see something in that article, though, about the fact that he won't have any additional budgets next year, which is a bit of a disappointment if he actually wants to be ambitious with the club in the short term. But at the same time, he's a fully qualified coach. He clearly is an excellent analyst of the game. He sees things that most other people don't see. So I think he'd be a brilliant coach and a brilliant manager. So it'd be fantastic to see him in the league. Also would be the post-match interviews on after matches at St. Pat's would be the key component of appointing Kenny Cunningham.
It'd suit him. Yeah. You're talking about Soccer Republic, are you?
Yeah.
Farah is best hope for gold in Tokyo. Best hope for Team GB? This is Team GB. This is the London Times. Brendan Foster was walking on the Northumbrian coast yesterday as he contemplated new borders. I mean,
what the hell does that mean?
Your man rang him up on his mobile phone. Mo Farah's win in the Chicago Marathon had the veteran commentator talking about coming out of retirement. He's our best hope of a gold medal in Tokyo. Assuming the Olympics becomes a tactical race, I believe he has all the tools. He could very well win. This gets really good. I gotta go through this. 2 stages, 1 voice. There's another guy who he says is also going to say he's going to win. I'll get to him in a minute. Here we go. Should he make good on the promise and win Britain's first Olympic title over 26.2 miles, then pub arguments may be rendered redundant. Farah's first marathon triumph has got the running community thinking about a 5th gold medal. For breadth of achievement and longevity, it would be hard to argue against him as Britain's greatest ever sportsperson. He may also be the greatest runner from any nation, both with bells and blisters. Sweeping statements, perhaps. But Farah made a serious statement of intent on Sunday. And then there's some other stuff about Alberto Salazar, and he's never failed a drugs test. So there you go. I mean, I hope Mo Farah wins the marathon now. I'm on Team Mo. I hope he wins that marathon. Just to see the outpouring, the orgy of nationalistic pride that post-Brexit Britain will experience as Sir Mo strides to glory in his fancy shoes.
Well, I want to see those pubs in post-Brexit Britain that are actually having arguments where the pub banter surrounds who's the best marathon runner in the world.
Well, it's more who's the greatest British sportsperson of all time.
Yeah, maybe it is. I don't think that was actually the phrase they used.
I know, yeah.
And also, it's Bobby Charlton or someone like that in post-Brexit pubs. Or
he means who's their greatest sportsperson.
Or else that darts player with the poppy shaved into his head. They are probably the greatest sports people of all time in post-Brexit.
Your man, the darts dude, he wins a lot of those crappy balls.
Yeah, to be fair, he probably has to be up there in terms of great British sports people.
No, yeah, he does actually. He does. He is exactly the epitome of great British sport.
He really is. That's who I'm going for. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is Jose is cursed. FA investigate Mourinho for swearing at the TV camera, and he faces touchline ban for Chelsea clash. You've also got Cork roaring into another final, and low to retain Leinster's spot for a Wasps visit. So it seems like Leinster are going to be playing their first team for the Wasps game this weekend in the Heineken Champions Cup. Back page of the Herald then this morning is Nuno crying wolf on Matt. Boss hits out at O'Neill for not picking player of month, Doherty. This is Nuno Espirito Santo turning up the heat on Martin O'Neill by saying he doesn't care what the Ireland manager thinks of his star man, Matt Doherty. And I think it kind of remains to be seen what Martin O'Neill now thinks about Matt Doherty, because like a lot of us have been blowing the whistle or blowing the trumpet for Matt Doherty, I should say, for quite a long time. But it's only really since the last international break where Matt Doherty's kind of stood up and has been like, I've got indisputable evidence that I'm like the best Irish player right now. So it's only at this point now that we could really say that Martin O'Neill is making a horrendous decision by not starting Matt Doherty. You can sort of give him a free pass, sort of, for not picking him in the last international break. Not really, but sort of.
Really? Like, is the international manager not like seeing all this stuff in advance and going,
well, he should be.
You're getting on really well at club level. I'm going to get you into my team. Just, I'll boost your confidence a little bit here. We're going to help you out.
Yeah, I guess he should be. Back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning is Hazard warning, Eden's dream is real. So Eden Hazard is talking about the likelihood that he's torn between signing a new Chelsea contract and a dream move to Real Madrid. He says he can't make up his mind. I don't want to say, yes, I'm signing a new contract, and then in the end, I don't end up signing a contract, so I will see. He's been very open about the fact that he actually really wants to go to Real Madrid.
Yeah, like, best club in the world, not this place, obviously. I mean, this place is grand, but it's like, it ain't no Real Madrid.
We've also got another story here saying GAA chiefs won't act over violence, so central level GAA chiefs have refused to intervene following a spate of violent incidents which have marred recent club games in Down, Derry, Tyrone and Cork. And another story as well here, Paul Lennon, an exclusive here. Ryan Johansson, who we've spoken about, who's likely to represent Luxembourg. He's got a Swedish father, an Irish mother, born in Luxembourg. It has emerged that Johansson is still very keen on playing for Ireland in the long term. The Luxembourg FA, who captained previously at under-17 competitive level, is aware of this and have not called him up for their under-21 squad as had been planned. And they've also ruled out a potential bid to captain at senior level that would tie him to the Benelux country for the rest of his career. So Paul Lennon is he just brings me good news every single week.
There you go.
Declan Rice a couple of weeks ago that there's still a live possibility he comes back to Ireland. Today, Ryan Johansson, future Irish star. So no need to keep tabs on the Luxembourg team for the next couple of years. Back page of the Mirror this morning is Don't Blame Jose. Old Trafford legend Rue says United's failing stars should take responsibility. Now, there's a load of the British press actually stationed in Washington, D.C. at the moment. They've obviously all been flown over by D.C. United to speak to Wayne Rooney because it's a pretty good time to speak to Wayne Rooney.
He's doing well, yeah.
Yeah, well, also, you will get the back page because Jose Mourinho, if you spoke about Jose Mourinho now, you would get on the back page of any newspaper, really. So it's perfect time. It's a genius marketing ploy, I should say. And Wayne Rooney is giving his support to Jose Mourinho. Now this one on the back of the Sun is Pinky Winky. Who is Jose pointing little finger at? Probe into manhood dig and FA rap for camera rage.
I didn't know that's what it was. All right, okay. All right, well, we'll come back to the Pinky Winky a little bit later on. He also said fijo di puta, blah, 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 whatever, to the camera the other day. And so he's going to get banned for that. I didn't realise that.
Yeah.
Like, straight up.
Trouble. He's in trouble.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to talk now about the Ireland game. Brian Kerr was in conversation with Nathan ahead of the Nations Cup this weekend and had some pretty interesting things to say. Here's how the conversation went.
Well, I think that given the controversies there have been and the performances in the competitive games, I don't remember the last match was against Poland, and it was a decent performance in Poland. Given that it was, remembering that it was a non-competitive game and it was an experimental team and players were given opportunity. I think that the whole group will be much more focused this time out. I think the staff will be very focused. I would hope that Martin and Roy come up with a clear game plan for each of these games.
Is there anything to suggest they will?
Well, I think that, again, I go back to a situation where, when the team loses a match heavily, the reaction of the staff and the manager is always, we can't let that happen again. Now, in fairness to Martin, you look at the last two competitive results have been heavy defeats, a 5-1, a 4-1, but there's been, I think, 10 or 11 months between those two games, so it doesn't mean that everything fell apart in a short period of time. I think it's difficult for them because of the lack of outstanding players, but I think they've brought some of the trouble on themselves by I would say, the reaction to certain situations. I think if they had the time again, they might have reacted differently. They may have picked different players, and tactically they may have lined up in a different way. But I think they do need to look at both games in a more clinical, tactical fashion and ensure that the players, I mean, Martin has continued to be dismissive about the idea that the players should know what the team is more than an hour before the match, on the basis that was the way it was done with Nottingham Forest and they weren't such a bad team. But that was over 40 years ago.
But that's not going to change. He's been a manager for 20 years and it hasn't changed.
Well, I understand that, but I'm also saying that the game is changing and the other international teams are very well prepared. They spend a lot of, you can be assured that every other international team that plays against Ireland have analysed and scrutinised exactly how Ireland play, the strengths and weaknesses of our team and our players, and how to go about it, how they might exploit some weaknesses in our team. If we constantly just going out playing off the cuff more or less with the quality of players we have, I think we are more likely to get bad results than get good results. If we had a group of outstanding international players, outstanding club players who are coming in to play in the international team and who know what their jobs are and who know their roles and prepare and are quite capable of making their own decisions and implementing a game that's effective, home or away against good class opposition, that's fine. But we don't have that at the moment. We have what I'd say is a team with no outstanding players, no world-class players, despite, Martin maybe name-checking Seamus Coleman as a world-class international player. I don't think he is at this stage of his career. He's had too many, he's been out injured for successive periods over the last couple of years, and it's great if he is back playing. He's not at the moment. Again, he's out injured. But we don't have any outstanding players, and in fact we have a very average group of players who are, a lot of them, struggling at their clubs and struggling to get permanent places at their clubs, are all players who are playing in the championship. So with that group of players, I think it's imperative that we have a game plan that the staff understand and that the players understand, and that there's options within that plan to change the plan and change the tactics according to how the game is going on and the scoreline is. But for me, too often I look at the games and it just looks like it's off the cuff, and actually that they're trying to change things as the match is taking place. They're trying to implement tactics in a reactionary manner as the game is going on, rather than making the decisions in advance of the match of how we should be playing. So that's, I would hope that we see something that gives us all a bit of hope that when the next draw comes about, we've got a chance, because the last period has been very, very disappointing indeed.
I'm sorry I asked. Great stuff as always. Great stuff as always. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, Nathan and Brian Kerr getting to the nitty-gritty of just how bad our squad is at the moment. And I guess that's the point that Nathan was making about, sorry, he was asking because I was a bit depressed about it. Darren, how are you?
Good morning, Ger.
How are you doing?
Not too bad, yourself?
How was everybody in 98 FM this morning?
Very happy with their 7 IMROs.
Yeah.
So they're boasting about it, feeling a little bit rough. But
I was going to say, feeling a bit rough.
I'm not self-inflicted. The voice isn't great, but I firmly believe that has nothing to do with my weekend. That's all down to the bout of man flu going on off the ball office.
And you're not in any way at a slightly...
No, uncompromised by anything except Lemsip.
Yeah.
My blood, my urine is clean. There's a familiar feel to the FAI Cup.
Sorry,
final.
Owen has a 1,000-yard stare over your shoulder there going, are the lads still talking? I can't tell.
We do the FAI Cup final?
Go for it.
Yeah, there's a familiar feel to it. Cork City will meet Dundalk for the 4th time in as many seasons. Cork reached the November showpiece with a 2-1 win over Bows in the semi-final replay last night. Graham Cummins, Carl Shepherd gave the Leesiders a 2-0 lead ahead of the break before an Ian Morris wonder strike. That doesn't even do justice to it. Brought Bows back into the game at Turner's Cross. Cork survived a nervy final few moments to set up their date with Dundalk at the Aviva Stadium on Sunday, November the 4th. Manager John Caulfield relishing the prospect of winning 3 in a row, but knows they will be underdogs.
The Skelter game, incredible for our club. I said to the boys during the week, I've played in the league 16 years. I've got to 3 finals in 16 years, and never forget that you might think they come every year. They have for 4 years in a row for us. We might be there again. Just epitomises lads like Alan Bennett, who has been what the club is all about, those type of people. And So for us to go back for 4 years, we need everyone to assemble the rebel army and go up there in force and give everything we have, because obviously we'll be underdogs again, but we could actually do it 3 in a row, which has never been done in Cork before, so that would be incredible.
Shelbourne managed to torpedo their hopes of promotion last night, having done their hard part by beating Drogheda 1-0 away from home in the promotion playoff last Friday night. They had 2 men sent off and lost on penalties. Rhys McIntyre booked twice in the first 15 minutes of the game. James English sent off for a straight red card, 2-footed lunge in the second half. Sean Brennan and Chris Lyon scored to give Drogheda the advantage in that tie. Shell scored to send it to extra time, 2-1 at full time. They battled manfully in extra time with 9 men, but then lost heroically on penalties. Sickener. Another year in the graveyard that is the First Division. Class.
Maybe they just weren't ready for it, Darren. Maybe they just weren't ready for it.
They absolutely were. And then to lose a man after 15 minutes is absolutely bleak. And to lose James English for such a stupid thing of a 2-footed lunge after he did so well on Friday night is rough. It's a tough morning to be a Shells fan. Good morning to be a Pats fan, though, because as you've been hearing, the former Republic of Ireland captain and OTB's favourite foodie, Kenny Cunningham, has emerged as a surprise candidate for the vacant job. Pat Fenlon and Paul Doolan also thought to be in the frame. The caretaker manager, Ger O'Brien, is well liked at the club. He's set to embark on his coaching credentials to get a UEFA Pro licence. If he is enrolled on a course, he can manage in the Premier Division. Now, O'Brien hasn't stated whether or not he wants the job, but we believe he will put his name forward if he does get onto a pro licence course in time. Cunningham does have the necessary coaching requirements to fulfil that job. He got his pro licence in 2010 and he has coached with the FAI, particularly working with the Ireland under-19s in recent seasons. Bit more information on the Manchester United manager Jose Mourinho. He's facing the prospect of a touchline ban. He will be investigated by the English FA for comments made after Saturday's win against Newcastle. He was caught on camera at full time at Old Trafford appearing to utter something in Portuguese, which Portuguese media report Mourinho is alleged to have said, "Fados filtos de puta," which translates roughly to "F off, you sons of bees," while making a gesture with his little finger. Mourinho could face a touchline ban if found that he used offensive, insulting or abusive language.
Yeah, I mean, they have to find that he did use all of those, right?
Yeah.
It's
going to be pretty hard to disprove that.
Is the little finger thing offensive? Is that just how Jose Mourinho points now?
No, he wiggled his little finger in the camera.
Oh, right, okay.
I think he was...
I thought he was just like pointing at the camera, and I was like, well, he's just pointing with his little finger, that's all.
No, it was like this.
All right, fair enough. I didn't actually see that.
not a Game of Thrones reference, is it?
Well, it could be. Maybe somebody was like, what's your favourite Game of Thrones character? And he was like this. And everybody was like, oh, a little bit bemused.
Or he's like Drake, like, call me on my cell phone.
Well, there you go. Actually, that's definitely it. It's definitely a Drake reference.
Potentially.
He's got a little bit, and he kind of started to dress a little bit like Peter Baelish, a little bit. He's got a little bit. He's got that dodgy accent thing going on,
Who will be the Arya Stark to his Peter Baelish? Who will finally do away with
Paul Scholes.
Paul Scholes.
Right size.
Ginger.
No, you've got the wrong Stark sister.
Yeah. So Arya is the face shifting, dark haired.
Who killed Littlefinger?
Arya Stark.
Was it not the other one? Sansa?
No, it wasn't Sansa.
Spoiler alert. There's been another twist in the Carnacon tale this morning. The Mayo Ladies Board have reportedly appealed the leniency of the 8-week suspension handed down to a number of the club's players. The Lady County Board wanted the club expelled from the championship in Mayo. They claimed the club brought the game into disrepute after 8 players chose to withdraw from the Mayo senior panel. They have since cited player welfare concerns for that decision. Carnacon face Moy Davits on Sunday for a place in the county final, with the suspended players set to return. The bans, the 4-week suspensions they have served, ending on Thursday at midnight. The Mayo Ladies County Board voted 27-5 in favour of an appeal to the perceived leniency of that suspension. That appeal expected to be heard later today.
The Mayo Ladies County Boards, right up there, vaulted straight in at number 1 or 2 of some of the worst sporting organisations that the world has ever seen, for stupidity, for bloody mindedness, for bringing the game into disrepute.
Unless they're right, though.
You are number 1.
Unless they feel wronged and they have more proof than we do. I don't think we know anything about this story.
I think we know a fair bit.
There's so much unsaid.
I think that we know quite a lot of stuff. And also, you play for your county team as a thing that you do. They can't force you. If this was professional and you refuse to do your job by playing for the county team, fair enough. But if you walk away from your county team, you do that by choice. That's a choice. That's not there's nothing else. So the club are being punished collectively for what they say is something that, I don't think the case is proven that they brought the game into disrepute, right? by refusing to make themselves available for the county team. The whole club is being punished and being thrown out of the championship for that. That's madness.
But they're appealing the leniency of the 4-week suspension because they felt that maybe they got it wrong, maybe somewhere in the middle was the right sanction, not a complete expulsion, which they initially proposed and followed through on, and maybe not a 4-week ban. They're looking for probably something in the middle, which they probably should have started with.
They ain't going to get it.
Doesn't look like it. The world is wondering what's next for Conor McGregor this morning. The UFC return possible, but a run in WWE could be likely. McGregor has been called out by a wrestling legend, Chris Jericho, who took aim at the fighter after he tapped out to Khabib Nurmagomedov at UFC 229 last Saturday night. Y2J tweeted to say even he could beat McGregor at this point and would even consider facing the Dubliner in an MMA bout. It's not the first time McGregor has had a run-in with a wrestler. He called out Brock Lesnar 2 years ago, which will give us any excuse to play this archive audio.
If you had the opportunity, would you like to face Conor McGregor in a WWE ring?
Man, I take shit bigger than that kid, all right? Come on, guys, let's get... I know you guys all play video games and you live in this false sense of reality and shit. I'm 290 pounds, all right? This guy's 145 pounds. That's if he's lucky and gets up and eats his Wheaties, okay? All right, if Conor McGregor wants to say some shit to me and get his name out there more than he already has by dropping my name, come here face to face, Conor, all right, and say it to my face.
How does Chris Jericho prove that he could beat Conor McGregor? Like, because
in an octagon and tries it.
In an octagon, yeah. It can't be in a WWE ring, obviously.
No, because that is picked by someone else.
Yeah.
OTB AM is live this morning at Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. That's done? All right, good stuff. Here is the, we were talking a little bit earlier on about this video. It's Keith Wood talking about James Lowe.
I think Fardy he's too much of a big game player for Leinster, was consistently last year. James Lowe I feel he's very annoying to play against. I mean, he looks like, maybe it's all the hair, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the fact that I'm follically challenged, but he kind of rubs people up the wrong way, but he rubs me up the wrong way looking at him. He's got boundless energy and he's really, really effective. And I have to say, I think he is a game changer. He's a match winner. I would have both of those in the squad. He has become very different from Nasiwa, but he has become that go-to Southern Hemisphere guy in the back line that you can depend upon to do something special. So, like I said it at the start, I thought he was fantastic at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely sensational at the weekend. Clearly man of the match, as almost pointing out a little bit earlier on. Let's move on, because at the weekend, Mo Farah won the marathon in 2 hours and 5 minutes, and today the English media have decided that he is Team GB's best chance of a gold medal in the Olympic Games. There's an amazing piece in the London Times this morning where they're talking about perhaps if he manages to do this, he's going to be the greatest runner of all time, and there's a reference to Usain Bolt with blisters, and he would then also be Britain's greatest ever sports person. With achievements like that, we have to talk about it, and I'm delighted to say we've got Dr. Ross Tucker with us this morning. Ross, good morning to you. You actually got up and live tweeted this race, so you got to bear witness to a little bit of history at the weekend.
Yes, the feel-good story of Mo Farah keeps getting better.
Tell us a little bit about just put some context on the performance. How good was the performance, and how astonishing is it that somebody can actually just be this good at the marathon as quickly as Mo Farah has become good at the marathon?
Yeah, it was impressive, because he ran the marathon the same way that he used to run the track, and that was, you didn't see him for the first 30 kilometers, and there were times when I even wondered whether he was actually feeling good on the day, because he was nowhere to be seen at the front. Very, very intelligent tactically. And then once things start to heat up, he's paying attention, he's at the front, and then for the last 5 kilometers, he dictates the race. So it was like superimposing a track race onto the roads of Chicago. So he did it the same as he's done on the track since, when would it have been? 2011, I think, was his first major world title, 2012 Olympics, 2016 Olympics. So the template that they've succeeded with on the track is obviously now going to work for them on the roads.
2 hours and 5 odd minutes is also a pretty impressive time, right?
Yeah, and that was off what was a relatively slow first half for them at 2:06 pace through halfway. And so the second half was very quick, which suggests that there's more to come. So the talk in the media, while it is typically gushing and one-sided, is probably justified in the sense that he is likely to be their best medal chance at the 2020 Olympic Games, as long as he stays healthy. I can't see him not winning a medal in that marathon because, those marathons don't have pacemakers. They tend to be slow tactical affairs, and that's where he excels. But he's also clearly got the speed to run fast if it's needed. So he will be very difficult to deny a medal. Whether he wins the gold medal, that's another issue.
So this isn't his first marathon. This is just him kind of finally putting all the bits of the marathon together. Is that right?
Yeah, he did the London one, which looked more for show initially a few years back, and then did London this year, where he was much more impressive in what was quite a brutal race. The pace was maybe a little bit too quick for everyone there. And then this is the one where it's sort of come together. So he will now do, I assume, a marathon in London next year. I would imagine that would be a big payday. Another one in late 2019, and then the question will be how he looks for the 2020 Olympics. By then he would be on his, if my maths are right, 6th marathon, which is about where you want to be. So again, he looks like a good bet for a medal in 2020 at this point.
Physiologically, how unusual is it for someone of 35 years of age to pull out a performance like this, given the lack of marathon pedigree that Mo Farah has in the bank?
Well, we've seen many top track runners make successful transitions to the marathon, so that's not unusual. You think back over the last decade, Gebre Selassie, Tergat, even before them, the format used to run on the track until your speed declined and then you went up to the marathon. So that part of it is not surprising. As you say, the age thing is maybe a little bit surprising, but I don't know what to make of age anymore, because it used to be that you used to peak in your early 30s and then used to disappear. Now we see some athletes are running their best performances in their early 20s, and other athletes are running their best performances in their mid-30s. I mean, Gebre Selassie, Wilson Kipsang, Kipchoge is 33 and running his 11th marathon a few weeks back when he broke the world record. So when it comes to these these age predictions and patterns that used to exist, I think all bets are off these days. And I don't know why that is. Is that a doping thing? Like doping is all about recovery and regeneration? It could be. The cynic in me wonders. Is it a sports science thing that we've just learned how to manage and recover better? I don't know, but it's unusual, but it's also normal, a new normal.
Yeah, I'm always interested to, we're all fairly sceptical when it comes to any of the great events that we cover and the amazing achievements that we see. But like, what is the truth about where sports science has taken us in terms of what would a natural evolution of performance be? Has it been a gradual curve, or has sports science followed, say, the speed with which we can now transfer data all around the world, the speed at which our computer processes information? Has sports science been going through a revolution at the same time as the doping revolution has happened? And is it impossible for us ever to know how far sports science has taken clean athletes?
It is impossible to know that, but I will say with a fair amount of confidence that the progression in knowledge and the contribution that sports science makes to performance is considerably smaller than your analogy with data. So if the acceleration in data transfer is this, then sports science is barely above the horizontal. And sports scientists obviously don't like to acknowledge that. And of course we know much more than we did in the 1980s and a little bit more than in the 1990s and mid-2000s. Of course we know that. But what you know is one thing. Whether you can use it to transform performance is quite another. And for me, one of the most telling things is when you look at women's track and field athletics, those performances from the 1980s have not even been touched in the last 30 years. So all the innovation, all the knowledge, all the advances in nutrition, training, recovery, equipment, and we still haven't got close to some of those performances from the 1980s. And that's because the effect of doping was so enormous that it took them out of reach even for 30 years worth of progress to come close to. So while I would not say that it makes no contribution, I don't think that it makes anything like the contribution many people would want people to believe that it does. And one of the places you see that is you look at cycling's 1 hour record. The moment they said we're going back to the equipment from the 1970s, that performance dropped from about 55 kilometers right down to where it was almost in the 70s. So human progress is not nearly as rapid as people would like to think. A lot of it's technology, and a big part of it, I think, is doping.
Speaking of the technology, because obviously the 2 hour marathon record is one of those kind of iconic targets that has been created maybe a bit through marketing over the last number of years, but there have been attempts to use technology to improve the footwear that the runners are using as a means of shaving a certain amount of time off that record. What is the status of the specific runners that Nike have invented to try and help break this record? Are they legal? Are we all going to be using them at some point in the near future? And is that something that there has to be some kind of agreement to go back to something, some specific random point in history and say, okay, anything that comes after that you can't use?
Well, they're legal, number one. That's because the policy that currently governs the use of equipment is so vaguely written that it's very difficult to apply it to make them illegal. Should they be illegal, I think, is a different question. My opinion is they should be, because when you look at that record from Kipchoge a few weeks back, everyone was saying what a breakthrough for human performance. Kipchoge, what a great athlete, by far the greatest marathon runner who's ever lived. The problem is that Nike has told us that the shoe is worth 4%. Well, they've got some research showing 4%, and one can quibble about whether that laboratory study of 4% is actually worth 4% in a race, but there's reason to suggest that it might be. New York Times did a study, or a massive survey, where they reckon that statistically it's worth about 1% compared to the next best shoe. So then when Kipchoge breaks the world record by 1.06%, which is what he did, the problem for people is that you have to choose. Are you going to celebrate Kipchoge the athlete, or are you going to celebrate Nike the shoe manufacturer? Because the improvement in the world record, even conservatively, is exactly what they are claiming the shoe would worth, on the lower end of the spectrum for what the shoe is worth. So if that's true, then Kipchoge is no better than the guys 5-6 years ago, but he's just got a better shoe. Now, I don't think that that's a healthy situation for marathon running. And what I think has happened, and this is what I'm led to believe from people who've told me this, is that a number of the athletes are running in that shoe despite sponsorship agreements. They're covering it up and they're trying to get away with it, because everyone recognizes that this might be, I say might because I'm not yet 100% convinced that it does do what it claims to, but that it skews the result of performance to such an extent that unless you are in that shoe, you may not have a chance of winning or breaking records. And I think that situation has to be dealt with, because otherwise everyone will be in those shoes within the next year or two, if they're not already.
It's not quite the same, but it's not a million miles away from the swimsuits that everybody set the world records in that then all of a sudden became banned the year after.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. And eventually what happened there was that other companies imitated the original, which was a Speedo suit, and within a year almost the integrity of a swimming competition had been lost, because the suits were helping some athletes disproportionately more than others. Some athletes had sponsorships that precluded them from having the suit, and eventually, unless you were in the suit, you couldn't win. And so the authorities took the decision to ban them, and I think it's actually a very similar situation to what we are looking at now for running shoes.
If we put the Kipchoge record on these shoes, and even just on kind of the development of sports science over the past couple of years, it is kind of astonishing when you look at the fact that it was a 78-second improvement on the previous record. We haven't seen that big an improvement on a record in over 50 years. Like, do you think that that's something that you look at and you think to yourself, well, fair enough, the way and the rate at which sports science is improving now is at a greater rate than we've ever seen before, certainly in the last half a century? Or do you look at that figure and think, where the hell is that coming from?
Yeah, the latter for me, because I know that sports science hasn't improved to the extent that it can take that much off what was already quite not artificially aided, although who knows, an aided performance. I mean, what was set in 2014, we haven't evolved as human beings in 4 years. Sports science hasn't developed to the extent, although people are claiming that it's a new energy drink. They're claiming that it's shoes. So I suppose some people would say that there is a contribution of sports science to that, but we can't quantify them, and so we don't really know where we stand. This is the dilemma: is that no one knows how to interpret what they see, because it could be the result of 4 or 5, broadly speaking, different things, and you can't quantify any one of them. So therefore, which one do you celebrate? And that was the point people, I think, missed, was that you can't celebrate Kipchoge and the shoe at the same time. And you have to pick. It was one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to Farah, the London Times this morning are basically saying that if he does win a gold in the marathon, he'll be Britain's greatest ever sports person, and that he would be the greatest runner of all time. And but that would be an interesting late period of his career that we would all have to get our heads around.
Yeah, imagine he'd started running this way when he's 21. He would have won twice as many medals, because this Farah emerged at the age of 26, which in itself is remarkable. So you've seen someone in 7 years as a late developer go on and do all the things that he's done. And there's no question, if he does that, and if, I'll go so far as to say, and if the full story doesn't emerge, he will go down as the most decorated running athlete in history. No athlete I can think of, I mean, I stand corrected, but who's won 3 distance medals at 3 consecutive Olympic Games? I don't think anyone has. He's done a double twice. If he adds a marathon Olympic gold in Tokyo, then statistically it would be very difficult to argue against that perception. But the story just, and this is opinion, the story just does not sit well with me, because the transformation and all the dishonesty about his associations and relationships with coaches, Jama Aiden, maybe primary among them, the Salazar investigation, the deceit about locations and TVs. It's just the list of things to disbelieve Farah is so long that even though we can't say he's doping, we can say he's untrustworthy. And so it sits very uncomfortably with me when he's got a list of medals and titles as long as he has.
Yeah, I find it remarkable. If we take Mo Farah at face value, if we take Kipchoge, that fantastic record at face value, it's actually, if you take all that at face value, it's laughable that we're even considering the possibility that the 2-hour marathon won't be broken, even if you put it into honest circumstances, not the one that Nike tried to virtually create last year, albeit falling short. Because you look at smashing that by 78 seconds, you look at Mo Farah turning into one of the greatest marathon runners without having huge pedigree in marathon running. Surely that record can be taken down a lot further if we're making these massive leaps in time in the year 2018. I know you've been on the record on the show previously saying that physiologically we shouldn't be making these leaps, but they're happening.
Yeah, and it seems at this point that it needs maybe 2 or 3 more little nudges and it'll be there. So anyone who says that it's not going to happen or that they won't see it, I think is deluding themselves. We will see a sub-2. The question is when. And in the absence of any of these external factors, I still think it would have taken 30, 40 years, but I think the needle has been moved forward a little bit now. I still wouldn't want to hazard a guess that it would happen in the next 10 years. For me, 2030 perhaps is when we'll see it. But so much depends on the, call it the regulatory environment, and that applies obviously to doping, and it applies to, in this case, the equipment.
You said earlier on about by the time the Olympics rolls around in Tokyo that Farah should be on his 6th marathon, that Kipchoge is on his 11th marathon. What is that spread of number of marathons that an athlete can actually do before they suddenly become an also-ran?
Yeah, so Kipchoge will be on, if he runs as expected 3 more, that'll be his 15th. Now, that's getting way over to the spectrum of where you should actually start to see the athlete in decline. I remember seeing a study that showed that athletes would peak in about their 4th or 5th marathon. So, and interestingly, that was irrespective of age. So if you started marathon running at 21, and if you started marathon running at 30, and even at 50, because this study looked at amateurs, hobby marathoners. And what it showed was that your first marathon, you're learning, and then you improve, and by about the 4th or 5th one, you get to your best one, and then you start slowing down again. But in the elite athletes, this trend also seems to be a little bit violated or different in the last decade. Because as I said, some athletes are coming straight in, and in their first or second race running as fast as they ever will, and then they disappear. Other athletes are coming in and then consistently running, and then by mid-30s they run PBs. I can think of 2 or 3, Kipchoge being one of them. So again, there was a rule of thumb which the current generation seems to have bucked. And so I don't know, I couldn't tell you, but I certainly, if I was all things being equal, I'd bet on the guy running his 6th one ahead of the guy running his 15th.
And is that, like, taking out any external, it's because the marathon is such a brutal thing on your body and psychologically, and it's so hard for you to kind of actually fully understand what the 26.2 miles actually means?
Yeah, that's sort of the main reason for it. Obviously, by the time you get into your mid-30s, you're dealing with the consequences of aging as well. And just by the way, another athlete who's really bucked the aging trend was Justin Gatlin. Everyone else was getting slow in their 30s and Gatlin was getting faster. You look at Valverde in cycling, it's the same thing. In swimming, Phelps, there was a 40-year-old athlete winning an Olympic medal a few years back. So what we used to know and think about aging, I think, has certainly been changed. But the short answer to your question is yes. It's just the 160 to 200 kilometers a week for 11 months of a year, the recovery after the marathon, and eventually you just lose the ability to do that and you start to slow down again, in theory.
There was one other thing that we wanted to talk to you about, Ross. A campaign was launched yesterday by the Department of Health here. It's called Zero Gains, and it's to try and counteract what they say is widespread steroid use amongst Irish gym goers. This target is particularly Irish teenagers, but I mean it applies to largely, it seems, young males in their 20s and 30s. Now, I know of stories where there are amateur cyclists getting completely off their heads on drugs to try and win races on a weekend. This seems to be a fairly widespread global phenomenon at the moment.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. In South Africa, there's been, every single year, there's some scandal around schoolboys and doping. There was a big study done where they surveyed 10,000 schoolboys in South Africa a few years back, and they found a lifetime prevalence of 10%. So basically 1 in 10 schoolboys will confess to doping. And you can imagine, even if half of them confess, the true number is 1 in 5. So it certainly is a big problem. And one of the most interesting things about that study, and I imagine it's very similar to what's happening in Ireland, is when they ask those people, why do you use the steroids, performance is one of the lesser factors. The main thing, the most common by a considerable amount, is for appearance and aesthetics and to look good. And so that gym-going population that has such easy access to drugs through the gym community, because that's where they get it from, is their peers and their colleagues and the trainers and so forth who are making a buck on the side, it's a massive issue. So I'm not sure how one deals with it. I'm not convinced that education is the most effective way to do it, but I certainly think a campaign for awareness is important.
So, as in, the best way would be to try and somehow cut down on the supply, like you think generally about the war on drugs and how insignificant the results have been for the investment, and just generally how criminalising people involved in it hasn't made any dent in the general population's willingness to take drugs. It's very hard to know what to do with this.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the reasons education often fails is because people are really terrible at making decisions today about the consequences that are delayed into the future. So in the 1980s and even the 70s, any campaign to tell people to not smoke because of the health risks of lung cancer, those were ineffective. The same thing now is you can tell someone, don't eat that burger and those extra large fries and a supersized Coke, because in 20 years' time you might get heart problems and liver disease and so forth. But people don't care about those because the outcome is so delayed. And one of the problems with anti-doping campaigns that focus on risk is that they're also trying to tell someone, don't do this because maybe in 10 years you'll see the consequences. That person is doping for the right now. They say, I want to look good in 2 weeks or 2 months. And so that's one of the problems, is trying to change behavior with that message. So that's not to say that it's not important to do, because I think if you're in a regulatory environment, maybe at some point you're saying we're never going to stop them from doping. So what we can do is we can educate and we can warn them so that we can suppress, lower the levels, and maybe where it was previously unsafe, we can bring it back down to what's a safe level, and that in itself is a win. So perhaps that's how we need to think a little bit about it. But the eradication of drug use through education, for me, is folly.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we often have this sort of theoretical debate about whether or not sport would be a more watchable thing in certain areas if everybody was allowed to use whatever they wanted to use. But do you think that there's enough information out there of these drugs that are being used illegally to actually protect athletes' well-beings if they were allowed to use whatever they used? Or is there sort of a situation with a lot of these where there's still a lot of hidden elements to these drugs that can do a lot of long-term damage that we're still not quite aware of yet?
I think that in the elite sporting community, it's obviously much easier to get that information into that group because they're smaller and they're confined. You know where you'll find them, and there's a message that you can deliver through known channels. You think about athletes are in teams, so therefore you send it through the league. When it comes to the recreational gym go, it's much more difficult, and so then the message gets diluted, it gets dispersed, and I would imagine, and I saw some of the articles about the project you're talking about there, is that about half of the people are ignorant around the risks around steroid use. So obviously there is a market that needs to learn a little bit about those risks. So I think it depends a little bit on who you're addressing in that instance. Elite athletes, I think a far smaller problem with education. For the masses, I think a far bigger one. But, and this is something I play devil's advocate a little bit, is I don't think anti-doping authorities should be worried about the community level of sport. For me, if the guy who works at the local bank wants to go and take some steroids to look good for summer, then that's really not a sporting body's problem. It's a health issue. And so he needs to be helped in a health perspective, whereas in an elite sport environment, it's about anti-doping and integrity of sport.
I think that's fair enough. Ross, always great to have you with us. Thanks a million for making the time for us this morning.
No, as always, good to chat, gents. Thanks very much.
It's Ross Tucker there. You can follow him on Twitter at Science of Sport. A great follow if any of this stuff is in your wheelhouse, or if you're interested really in the integrity of sport at any level, then you should get on Ross's Twitter. I agree with the point about if bank manager X injects himself with steroids, it's nothing to do with the Irish Sports Council or the World Anti-Doping Agency. It is absolutely to do with the Department of Health and probably the guards if the anabolic steroids, or the customs if the anabolic steroids are being illegally imported. At the same time, once that person uses drugs to compete in an amateur sports event, then that sports body needs to somehow decide that they're going to randomly test, and you open up a whole can of worms at that point about but I'm definitely hearing stories of cyclists in amateur races suddenly starting to outpace people that they've been training with for 10 years and bragging about, I'm getting this stuff, I got this stuff.
Well, that's the thing. I wonder in any sport, if you're at a situation where you're a teenager and you don't get to the level where you're a professional athlete in your given sport, what's stopping you then, if you take that on just a little bit further, stopping you going away for a little while and doping yourself up off your own back sort of thing, and suddenly then you re-emerge into the professional ranks and you've still got the long-lasting benefits of all of that. There are people who you will be a teammate of who are being judged by the anti-doping authority of that country, or if they were of the mind to dope, they would have to get through those protocols, whereas you've been just through the Department of Health's protocols down through the years and naturally would be a good bit more lenient. Certainly if you were of a mind to cheat, that would be one way of going about it. 100%,
and it's a well-worn path, and you can see that in people's career paths. All right, let's move on. This Friday, October the 12th, is World Egg Day. Yes, it's World Egg Day. I do like me some eggs. To celebrate that, Board Bia brought Limerick star Cian Lynch and Irish hockey silver medalist Nikki Evans together around their Quality Assured Eggs campaign. Here's how we get on with Cian. As you can see, Cian Lynch is here with us. Cian, how are you?
Great, thank God.
Last time you were here in studio with us was kind of mid-season, and expectations weren't that high, but they were creeping up all right because the quality of the performance that the team had put in was really good. At what point did you all start to think, hang on a second, something pretty magical is happening here?
I don't know. At the start of the year, we kind of said to ourselves, take every game as it comes, like from the Waterford Crystal League there, the Munster League, onto the National Hurling League, getting out of Division 1B. It was just every week there was a game, and that's what we focused on. It was the same once the Munster Championship started. We kind of got off to a good start against Tipperary, then played Cork and we drew, and then to play Waterford inside the Gaelic grounds and got a win, and then we had the loss against Cleary was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for us, and we drove things on. The quarter-final against, or to play Carlow in the qualifiers and Kilkenny and Cork, and ended up playing Galway in All-Ireland final, which it all happened so quick. You don't take...
As you can see, Cian Lynch is here with us. Cian, how are you?
Great, thank God.
Last time you were here in studio with this was kind of mid-season, and expectations weren't that high, but they were creeping up all right because the quality of the performance that the team had put in was really good. At what point did you all start to think, hang on a second, something pretty magical is happening here?
I don't know. At the start of the year, we kind of said to ourselves, take every game as it comes, like from the Waterford Crystal League there, the Munster League, onto the National Hurling League, getting out of Division 1B. It was just every week there was a game, and that's what we focused on. It was the same once the Munster Championship started. We kind of got off to a good start against Tipperary, then played Cork and we drew, and then to play Waterford inside the Gaelic grounds and got a win, and then we had the loss against Cleary was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for us, and we drove things on to quarter-final against, or to play Carlow in the qualifiers, and Kilkenny and Cork, and ended up playing Galway in All-Ireland final, which it all happened so quick. You don't take time to actually sit back and analyse the whole thing. That we're just delighted we got over the line then, you know.
The opportunity to recover as quickly as you did from the Munster final defeat was something, obviously, in retrospect, it was very important, and maybe the defeat was something that the team needed as well, just to recalibrate, stop and think, okay, how is this going, what are we doing, why are we doing this?
Yeah, it was huge, like, you know, we were on a bit of a roll, and, you know, at times in sport you can get carried away, or your minds might get focused on other things, and for us, going down to Ennis, we didn't perform, and Clare played very well on the same day and beat us, and it was kind of a moment where we regrouped and got back going and went back training and drove things on again. And it was kind of a kick up the backside more so for a lot of us, and so there was an opportunity to get into Munster final and we lost out on that, but to regroup and get back into an All-Ireland quarter-final and to beat Kilkenny and to drive on against Cork and to finally play Galway in the final was just unreal for us, and to get over the line then was huge.
Were there big conversations after the Clare game, or was it kind of calm? Was it like, what happened there, why did it happen?
We were lucky enough it wasn't knockout hurling, so it was a different setup, the whole thing, but for us we knew ourselves that a performance like that wasn't going to be good enough to drive on, and we saw that we didn't perform on the day, but no, there was no ties thrown out of the Prem or anything crazy. We were accountable for ourselves, and we just got going, got back up on the horse and drove things on again, you know.
Who's leading those conversations? Who's having the chats? Is it everybody? Is it management? Is it...
we're all the players are kind of driving on, but John Coyle, in fairness to him, is brilliant. Like, he's a father figure to most of us on the team, you know. He's sailing the ship really, and the backroom team, the whole lot of them are brilliant to kind of keep us focused, and Joe and Paul Knock there in training to drive things on again, just keep the spiral going upwards, and that's what it's about. And Joe, we kept the heads down and drove on, and thank God we're able to talk about a bit of success today, you know.
Yeah, like, I think when people kind of talk about a team that makes the breakthrough, the first question people ask is, what was this new incredible thing that they were doing? It seemed, though, that you were doing a lot of simple things, especially kind of some of the things that we wouldn't have seen in the public eye, but you were just doing them right. You were doing the simple things very, very right in the backroom team. There was no kind of big formula that people brought in to end the drought in Limerick.
Yeah, like, there's no point getting carried away or trying to do crazy stuff. Like, for us, it was just get the heads down and work hard, and I know it's a cliche, but when you work hard, like, things start to move up, and, you know, we took every game as it came. Like, we never looked beyond whoever we were going to be playing the week coming, and that's important, you know. There's no point getting carried away and trying to see an end result when you haven't played initial games. But John Coyle in the background team and the 36 lads in the panel, we just all had the same mentality and the same drive to drive on for each other, and everything that was happening outside the white lines had nothing got to do with us, you know.
Does it help that you've been so successful at underage level? Of course, you talk about kind of staying humble there to a certain extent, or not getting ahead of yourselves, but also you need to have that deep confidence that you are good enough to go toe-to-toe with every team in the country from that underage level.
Yeah, it is huge, obviously. You know, we were lucky enough to get to minor Munster finals and minor Irelands, and even the 21s in 2015 and 2017, but it's just that belief, you know. It actually is huge in hurling and sport. Like, if you can see that people believe in you, you actually start believing in yourself. And for us, John and the whole backroom team believed in us, and so we stood back and believed in ourselves, and we trained hard and worked hard on the pitch and worked hard off the pitch, and look, we reaped the rewards on the day. But come here, like, there's great credit due to the other teams like Galway. You know, they put up a great fight against us, and, you know, I admire what they've done over the last few years as well. And when 2019 comes, it's going to be an open book again, you know?
Absolutely. Well, like the thing is, when 2019 comes, it's going to be, I think it's probably going to be one of the most hotly anticipated sporting competitions we've had in this country in a long time. But when I think about it, like you talk about next year, you can talk about the future for quite some time now. You're still a very young player. Most players, like you look at Aaron, for example, he didn't make the breakthrough until this year, which is kind of the normal age to be making that breakthrough at senior level. You obviously made it a lot earlier than most hurlers do. How do you look back on whatever 19-year-old Cian Lynch when he first comes in and how much he's developed down through the years, not just as a hurler but as a person?
I don't know, I'm getting old now, I'm feeling the old aches and pains, like, but I don't know, it was 4 years ago I had my first year in the Limerick senior panel, but come here at this stage, it's like everyone just buys into the whole mentality of the group. If you're 18, 19 or if you're 24 or 34, you know, if you buy into something, everyone's going to aim for the same thing and strive for the best, and that's what we've done. Like, there's no, like, the way we look at it, if it's your first year in the panel or it's your 10th year in the panel, you're as important as every other man on the pitch if you're number 1 or 36, and that's why we pay great credit due to the guys that didn't get to play on the day inside in Crow Park, you know. Like, people ask, like the 15 lads that were nominated for the All-Stars, you look back at the boys that drove us on in training and drove the whole thing, and you're only as good as the lads around you, and that's what you keep going back to, and it's kind of that belief in every man in the team and every man in the background team.
Where did that come from? Where did the belief come from, though? Because you can say it, right?
Yeah.
But you know, you guys had it in the last 10 minutes in the All-Ireland semi-final, and even in the final when Galway are making their comeback, you still have it. And you had it in the opening of the All-Ireland final as well, because there's a couple of wides where people are wondering, and then the actual team just calms down a bit and finds their stride.
I think kind of might go back to John Kiley in 2015 when we were in 21's team. It would have been Darren Burns and Grot Hegarty's age and Barry O'Connell. And no one gives us a chance going out against Tipperary in the first round. We were led to believe that we were going to go out and win the game, and thank God we did. We got over the line against Tipperary in the Gaelic rounds and went on and won the All-Ireland Championship. And from there on, John has just kind of kept believing in us, and we started to believe in ourselves, and a bit of confidence is no harm either. Like, you have to balance confidence and the belief and mix them well, and thank God we did, like, you know. But any given day, you saw the championship this year, anything is possible, like.
Yeah, when Joe Canning is standing over that free with the last puck of the game, effectively, what are you thinking?
I don't know. It all happened so fast, you don't even know what's going on, like, you know. For people that weren't on the pitch, it's probably a lot harder watching in than it is being there in the moment, because everything's happening and you have to concentrate on the next ball. But Joe, like, he's been a role model for me since I was a young fella. I've seen him playing for the last number of years, and even getting to play against him is a massive honour, like. But just a small bit of luck we had on the day, like. But
where were you when the free was being taken?
Jeez, I was kind of running headless there. I didn't know where I was going, but I was kind of out around just in front of the full back line, we'll say.
Right. So if the ball was dropping in,
yeah, like,
that's the thing. Those
would have gone anywhere, like.
Well, they pinball so often, like.
Oh, luckily enough, Tom Condon was there. The old hand, it was kind of creaking for a while, but he got it up there now. But no, it was great. But like, that's sport. We look back at the championship this year, like, you see teams are up 8 or 9 points in games, and the other team comes back and gets to a draw or gets to a few points, you know, which is huge. And that's the kind of the real thing about hurling this year, that has kind of shown that anything is possible. In 5-10 minutes of hurling,
yeah,
the game could turn its back and change completely, you know.
Yeah. Those games are wild to play in, I presume, because they're wild to watch.
Yeah, they're hectic. 1 minute you'll be up 4 or 5 points, you could be down 6 in 2 or 3 minutes, like, you know. But it's great, and that's why you kind of love playing the hurling. Like, it's so unpredictable, you know. On any given day, any team can go out and win a game, you know.
The semi-final, though, like, after the semi-final, you must have had unbelievable confidence, because it looked like you're dead and buried at one stage in that game, very close to the end.
Yeah, it was. We were down a good few points towards the end, and I don't know, we just kept bouncing back, like, and there was that never say die attitude that we've kind of had. But you know, the great credit due to Cork too, like what they've done the last years in the Munster Championships, winning 2 Munster titles, but to be getting so close, and for us to beat Cork in the semi-final was huge. You know, playing against the likes of Par, Horgan there, and these lads that are peaking in their careers and flying it, but to get over the line for us was huge. And just to get to Crow Park in All-Ireland final day, Limerick hasn't been there since 2007. It was just huge.
Were you able to take in that whole occasion? Because like I love asking people about the parade and what their attitude is to it. Like, are you looking around? Are you told not to look around? Are you told to look around so you can just normalise it? What do you do?
For me personally, like, I kind of treat every game as if it's a normal game. You know, there's no point changing anything you normally do because it's an All-Ireland final. I know there's the parade and the meeting the president and all the other sideshows that go on, but as a player, you just have to concentrate on doing your warm-up and focus.
Present though, during the parade, are you like, okay, this is the parade, or are you like, okay?
Yeah, I kind of look around and try and relax, be as relaxed as possible, because if you get too excited or get too hyped up, you can kind of overthink the whole thing. Like, but no, it's great. Even walking around Croke Park there and seeing the green standing up and the roar, like, and even seeing the Galway colours roaring as well. It's all immense, like, and everything happens so quick, and it's so surreal. You know, to think that you're actually in a position playing an All-Ireland final. You know, since a young fella, it's what we've all dreamt of. You know, even going to matches when we were young, watching Kilkenny's and Tips and Corks and Galway playing finals, like watching Eddie Brennan and Henry Shefflin. You know, you dream of being in their shoes, and it's just immense that we got the opportunity, you know.
Yeah, Eddie Brennan tearing Limerick apart now.
Yeah, geez, don't. We're haunted.
That's an incredible thing to have in your mind, to actually relax you in an All-Ireland final, because if I was thinking I'm going to emulate my heroes right now, that to a lot of people would be something that would get them quite nervous, but it must be something that you naturally have. You never really have got worried too much before big games, that you kind of do embrace it all. Would that be fair to say?
In fairness, if you didn't get nervous for a game or an All-Ireland final, there'd be something wrong, but obviously the nerves, you have to balance them with the excitement and the whole lot. But obviously going out into the final, you try not to overthink the whole thing, like, because so these opportunities only come around every so often. Like, you know, as you said, 2007 was the last time Limerick team were in a final, and for us to go out and represent Limerick in 2018 and go on and win was huge. And you know, people ask what it feels like, but even trying to describe it in words is hard. Like, you know, it's that inner feeling of, you know, excitement, of all the emotions down through the last 45 years are all just after exploding, like, you know? Yeah. It's huge.
We had you on the morning after, and there's like a link to somebody who's like a very famous person from your club on the phone, and just this love in the voice between the two of you. Like, you kind of feel like you're the representation of the Bennis dynasty, and of that part of the world is like properly represented at this amazing moment.
It's huge, like, yeah, it does go back to the legacies that were left before us. Like, you know, you look at the lads in 73, what they set in stone, and it goes on to the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s there. Like, you know, there's great credit due to those guys and those management teams. Like, they set the whole thing in stone, and lucky enough we drove on. But it comes back to your family, and you know what it means to them. I was talking earlier on, like, you know, without your parents or without your brothers and sisters and extended family, it wouldn't be possible, like, you know, to have the gear washed or to have the dinner cooked.
Yeah.
You know, those small things that people don't see behind the scenes that make it so special, you know.
Yeah, well, your ma was brilliant.
Jeez, she's no swelled head now going around the rest. No, it was great.
There's a photograph that we WhatsApped you that the morning after it.
I know, I can't get over it. I know.
It's just a brilliant photograph. I hope you have it blown up on the walls, or I hope she does anyway.
Oh, and then, that's Kieran, is it?
Yeah, that's from the All-Ireland final. The defeat in '96, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it?
It is mad.
Sure.
She obviously liked getting on the field. And that's Darren O'Brien there. Lovely moment and off the ball when they were interviewing Limerick midfielder Cian Lynch about his mum's pitch invasion. There's a great photo of the two of you in the paper. I haven't seen it. We just sent it to your WhatsApp. Ah, God. Doesn't happen in soccer.
Jesus.
The 96 Limerick leader said that it was Kieran's wife, not Valerie, but we definitely got that right, so we checked it with her, put the record straight for her when we talked to her during the week afterwards. There's great footage, I presume you've seen that, from the crowd of her kind of just getting through the dart.
I don't know how she wasn't rugby tackled to the ground, like.
Because there was people in front of us that were definitely getting properly rugby tackled and marched off, but
that's what it's about, though, you know, in fairness. Like, as much as it's special for us as players, being on the pitch and going on and winning, like, for your parents, especially my parents, like, all parents obviously on the same boat, but they're going to our matches since we're under 8s and 10s to 12s, and they've seen us on the great days and seen us on the not so great days. Like, you know, there's massive highs and lows, and it's always a place you go to after games. You have to go home, like, you know, if you're after winning or you're after losing, you're always going to have to face your parents, and they're the ones to put the arms around you and give you an old pat in the back or tell you to keep you level grounded, which is huge. But it's special, and I know every lad can say the same thing, like, you know, and that's, for me, people see my mother and my father delighted with what Limerick's after doing, and see her on the pitch after the game is just, you know, it's actually hard to even describe it.
I know, it's like it's a moment that you'll always have forever. Like, it's sensational stuff.
Yeah.
It is, I think, too, also something that maybe we're beginning to understand a bit more, that, like, players talk about these things in a way that maybe they haven't done in, you know, like the team of the 80s and 90s. They wouldn't have talked about that kind of stuff because we're just getting a little bit better talking about stuff and the importance of
it's huge, like,
being part of your community as well.
Yeah.
And it seems like you guys feel like you are ambassadors and representatives, like, you know, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people aren't ready for that. There's a bit of pressure that comes with that and a bit of responsibility that comes with that. But it's not something you guys are shying away from.
No, sure, geez, like, everyone's only delighted to be able to represent your local village. Number one, like, it's where you kind of were brought into, and it's where you begin your sporting your whole childhood, like, and coming through your primary schools on secondary school, like, especially our primary school in Patricksville. Like, we were training with Paul O'Connor there, a local Patricksville man. He was training us for the underage teams at the school, and what he used to do for us at 10, 11 years of age is just unreal. Like, you know, it's unheard of, the training we used to, and it was just unreal for us to have that structure in place and to be able to represent Limerick and represent those guys and those people that are always supporting us and always behind us. Is just special in your local community. It's where it begins and it's where it all finishes too, you know.
What's it been like since winning? Is it like
it's madness, like, it's brilliant, it's great madness, like, you know. Like, the few weeks after, it's just unreal, the buzz around Limerick. Like, you're still seeing people going around with their Limerick tops on, like, and even I went up to the ploughing championships, and normally I'd be going up browsing around, but I was up in one of the GA tents, and just to see the amount of Limerick kids coming in with their Limerick crests and Limerick tops, and parents wearing the Limerick tops, like, for years you'd rarely see that, you know, you'd rarely see Limerick crests going around the place, and it's just putting Limerick on the map and giving kids a bit of hope and a bit of something to strive for, like, you know, that they can believe anything is possible, you know.
Yeah. Did you do a tour of the country, or the county at least? Have you been part of that kind of?
Yeah, we've all done our fair bit of getting around. Like, in fairness, we've tried to go to as much clubs as possible, like, in as much schools, but it's hard, like, you know, because you have to kind of treat every club the same, and every school should be treated the same. But no, it is great. Obviously, going back to your own school and your own secondary school is special, like, you know.
Yeah, that must be pretty amazing.
Yeah, we were in our school last week, and our Cleary, and there was 13 or 14 of us that went back, and, you know, see teachers there that brought us to Harty Cup finals and who soldiered with us, you know, through those important years of 13, 14 to 18 years of age, like,
to keep your skills going, to keep you still interested in it, to keep you still obsessed with it.
Even off the field, like, even on a personal level in development, like, you know, it's huge, those age groups of getting on in life, and lads trying to find themselves too, like, you know.
A very hard thing to do.
Yeah, you know.
It's crazy to think that such a small petri dish of talent could backbone a county in such a significant way, isn't it?
Yeah, as in, like, the whole,
like, that's 14 or 15 of you went back.
Yeah, oh, it's crazy, like, to think that our school had that many lads involved. Even you, Brian Kerr was a selector, like, and Paul Knirk were in the school too, like, so.
I didn't know Paul Knirk was from there as well.
Yeah, he was in our school as well, yeah, so it's a fine share of us, but it was great. Our school was good because you had a good mix, like, you had lads there from Clare. Like, I was in class with Ian Galvin there, like, so good old friends, but even just playing against them now, it's just gas, like, you know, you've that where you grew up together, now you're playing against each other, and you've even lads coming over from Tipperary, but the school itself, aside from the hurling, is just a great sense of bond and community spirit, so it is ideal.
I want to show you this one last photograph here. This is from today's launch, which is not quite the Deli Alley.
Desperate, isn't it? I love my old legs, but
always be closing. No. You got the Deli Alley thing straight down, or did that take hours?
Yeah, no, I was practicing the week before, and even when the photo was taken after the game, I was kind of turning and twisting for ages. Like, no, it was great. It was Darren Donovan that kind of started that. I kind of caught on, but no,
that was probably the most high pressure thing you did all day.
Trying to turn down hand, pains everywhere, like. I know,
you were leading the sing song afterwards, apparently. You like a bit of Westlife.
No, that's Sean Finn now. No, in fairness, after the whole thing, it's just, you've memories like that are going to last a lifetime, you know, but it's about capitalising on all of us and trying to drive on, and for us at the moment, we're with our clubs and embrace that and trying to do the best we can for our local communities, because that's what's special, you know, being able to go back to your local clubs and try and drive on and win something with them. But so we'll get back on the horse again in a few months and try and drive things on again.
Look, it's going to be great whatever happens, because no one can ever take this away from you, Keane.
No, please God.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much, lads. Thanks.
Yeah, so that was Cian Lynch with us there yesterday. We're going to hear from Nicky Evans. They were all part of the Quality Assured Eggs campaign, because it is World Egg Day this Friday, and that was all courtesy of Board Bia. There's a couple of other things that we want to bring your way. Darren Hughes talking about the GAA rules, and Tommy Conlon, I think, is where you're going to start.
Yeah, put the tricolour away, Connor. You're embarrassing, says Tommy Conlon's column in the Times Ireland edition this morning.
A lot of people get embarrassed about a lot of stuff, right? Like, are you embarrassed by other people's actions?
No.
I don't ever feel responsible.
As an Irish person.
Yeah, I don't like clown in Irish suit, clown in like Paddy's Day stuff. Clown being clown is a clown.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he's an Irish clown doesn't mean I have to feel guilty about him.
Exactly. If he was, if the clown was maybe a family member,
then you feel then. I mean, maybe then, but even then, I'm not my brother's keeper.
No. Maybe then it needs to be a child or something like that. Maybe.
Oh, I mean, I'm embarrassed by my children all the time. That's different. Which is out in all good podcast apps and some crappy ones. Yeah.
Oh, episode 1 was good. Anyway,
people are genuinely surprised.
Tommy Conlon, he obviously has a great way with words. It's a very good column. But whether or not you agree with it might be a different story. He says, the intruders on Saturday night in Vegas, thought to be from Nurmagomedov's camp, who scaled the octagon to get into the ring while their hero was busy outside of it attacking some bloke from Conor McGregor's camp. They too were demonstrating that the cage is just an artificial construct. Now, this is the idea that there is no barrier at all between what is licensed and unlicensed fighting in the sport, because basically they are one and the same. The octagon cannot keep out that medieval lust for street fighting because it is there precisely to liberate that lust, to let it run riot, and to parlay that spectacle into multiple millions of dollars.
What's the difference from that in boxing?
Well, he goes into that a little bit. In boxing, the dominant fighter dishes out punishment to his opponent. In UFC, a type of sadism is permitted. There is neither style nor science to the business of repeatedly punching and elbowing the exposed face of an opponent, pinned down on his back and unable to properly defend himself.
I do think the ground and pound is the main issue that people have with the UFC, and I find it difficult to defend that. Everything else, I'm like, yeah, totally fine, fair enough. You've decided that this is two grown, consenting adults, fully cognizant of what the risks are. Although you should have to sign a thing that says you will get brain damage if you get repeatedly hit in the head. You should have to sign, I understand, I know, that's fine.
Yeah.
The ground and pound just makes no sense to me. It's like you don't, the sport doesn't need it, but clearly that's one of the things that attracts the fans.
There was there was a lot of this written yesterday as well, and I do wonder, would the conversation be happening in the print media about the sport if the afters hadn't happened?
Yeah. It's exact. Well, because it has, these pieces have been written.
Yes.
After every.
See, I think they kind of were phased out near the end of 2016 when Conor McGregor became a regular occurrence in our lives. That at the start of the McGregor phenomenon, these think pieces were written, and fair enough if you believe that. But I really believe that we wouldn't be having this conversation unless Nurmagomedov jumped out of a cage.
I think in the aftermath of João Carvalho's death, there will always be these pieces written around MMA fights and UFC, and the fact that there was a promotion stopped in, was it Meath a couple of weeks ago? I think that there's a general distrust of the sport because the standards aren't uniform. The governing bodies aren't as accountable as, certainly they're new, they're for profit, and they're not as well established as, say, the boxing ones are. And as a result of that, people rightly question whether or not the sport is organised collectively, properly, and is taking all of the necessary precautions to save people's lives when you consider people are getting elbowed and punched in the head. And so there is always going to be that suspicion, and until the sport comes out properly and organises and shows leadership on that, you're always going to have these pieces, and there should be the pieces saying, look, this sport needs to get its shit together.
Yeah, I guess, I wonder, does it kind of tie in to a certain extent a little bit with what we were chatting about with Ross Tucker there when it comes to regulation of performance-enhancing drugs, where if you have something that's properly regulated, it's better than it being kind of in the Wild West scenario. And I'm not saying that MMA in Ireland is still in the Wild West days, but it's still got a lot of work to do.
There are promotions that are Wild West, definitely.
So I do wonder, there sort of needs to be an acceptance that we need to get on with this. It is a sport and stuff like that. That's certainly my opinion that it is, but I think even people who don't enjoy it as a sport, the whole idea that this isn't a sport is sort of reductive. The other passage I just want to read out for it, and this is kind of like the more humorous bit that we kind of spoke about with the headline with regards to put the tricolour away. It is time he put the tricolour away. He has become the walking embodiment of an old stereotype that was supposed to have expired a long time ago. At times, he has resembled the caricature of the fighting Irishman as infamously portrayed in those punch cartoons from the 1800s. Part leprechaun, part swearing buffoon. part simian skullcracker. He has been a Pied Piper to a horde of fanboys who seem to enjoy a vicarious boost to their esteem simply by floating around in his orbit. They seem to like to be draped in their tricolours, proclaiming their Irishness to the world as if it is an achievement in itself. This sense of ethnic exceptionalism is another primitive virus that has enjoyed a revival in the McGregor era.
Yeah. Around the world, you see people with the tricolour in their Twitter handle, and you're like, what kind of person is this going to be who I'm suddenly interacting with? And for some people, it's like completely
normal.
Yeah, and then a lot of people are like assholes.
Has Conor McGregor helped make nationalism even, like, if you already think it's a bad thing, has it made it worse? If you think nationalism is a good thing, has it made it a sort of distasteful thing? The idea of the tricolour, as you say, in Twitter handles is automatically wrongly, I think, kind of dismissed. It's kind of like, exactly as you say, what kind of person is this? Whereas I think that's the completely wrong way of thinking. Whereas it might not represent anything whatsoever, or you can have an honest, well-meaning sense of nationalism, whereas the tricolours come to represent almost something. It's taken an ugly sense in a lot of these scenarios.
I don't know. I think frequently in our past the flag has been, co-opted by people who are using it as a symbol.
Yeah, well, obviously that case is very obvious, but in the modern sense of
now, it's like there's a bunch of clowns trying to organise around the fringes of our society, who are like trying to get Ireland out of Europe, who are trying to like have Ireland for the Irish, who are trying to renege on all of the progression that we've made in the last 2 decades. Like, there are those people out there. Are they McGregor fans? I don't know. I mean, I'm not drawing that Venn diagram just yet.
Well, it's certainly enjoying a revival in the McGregor era, says Tommy Conlon.
Darren Hughes is out talking about the new rules, the 5 proposed rule changes that are being discussed at the moment. He was speaking after the club match of the weekend. He captained Scottstown to their 4th consecutive Monaghan Senior Football Championship with a 113-13 point win over Ballybay in Clonus. And then it just seems like, yeah, I'm ready to talk about this now. And Declan Bogue was there, obviously, with the mic up. And Darren Hughes is like, there's no logic to it. I don't know if they even played the game. It was embarrassing to read it, for them to sit down and waste time, and to let that go to print. He talks about maybe they were getting expenses. Which is, I think, a little bit harsh here, right? And then he's like, the sin bin. I mean, the sin bin should have been in already. It nearly worked twice. So, ding, he's in favour of the sin bin. The attacking mark, ding, he's in favour of that. It's the kickouts that he has the issue. Let me just read this bit here. So, the kick-out, where both teams are only permitted 2 midfielders inside the 45-metre lines at a restart. This was the year where Rory Beggan emerged as having the greatest leg in the history of Irish sport. I've never seen a man kick a ball as far as he did against Kerry that day in Clonus, where there was a ball that went from the goal kick to the full forward line.
Yeah.
It was insane. It was like, he has literally got the greatest leg. He should be this summer trying out for NFL teams, being able to kick from the 70 metres. Like, he would be the richest man in kicking history.
His foot could almost beat Brendan Cummins in the long puck, or in the puck fodder.
Like you wouldn't be surprised if there were, the right conditions. But, and here, I didn't even think of this. There was a time in the match at the weekend where he took a goal kick out, and it didn't get over the 45 because of the wind. Which means, under the new rules, that'll be a throw up on the 20, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if the wind's blowing a certain direction, every kick out is actually going to be, you're going to just have to throw the ball up on the 20-metre line.
That's
a bit harsh.
It was a small bit harsh, entertaining. The novelty would probably wear off after a while, particularly if you're supporting the team that are getting punished time and time again. And yeah, I think that's probably the litmus test straight away there for a new rule. And maybe they can just slip that one out, because it's not really going to work. The thought behind it and the idea of the end result was fine, I guess. But the actual practicality of reaching the 45 every single time is not ideal. Yeah. But also the idea, like, is this going to go all the way down to underage level? Like, if you try down the National League?
Yeah, the under-8s. We could just start having throw-ins. I mean, again, it'll be like, what we want is the game to be engineered so that there's like 15 6'6" guys on one team and 15 6'6" guys on the other team. And that's it. The day of the little guy is over.
It's a shame, really.
There'll be like a special league for the 5'5" to 5'8" people.
Yeah, it's like an episode of Jackass, isn't it?
Or Big Train with the jockeys.
Well, I guess there will be a higher calibre of jockeys in Ireland then, wouldn't there? Not that it's already an incredibly high calibre, but all the little people would have to go and do something else.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be able to play football anymore.
No,
that'd be really horrible. Obviously, if it had to pertain to hurling, Tommy Walsh would never have made it. Pertains to football, the likes of Owen Merchant and Paul Murphy, their days might be numbered. But if Rory Beggan can't reach the 45,
then
straight away it's done. It's done. It's nailed in the coffin.
That's the evidence. Yeah, that's true. All right, calling all students, we've teamed up with Vodafone X to fuel your passion for sport by giving you the chance to join Team Off the Ball for a full week. You'll get the chance to see what happens behind the scenes of the show, attend a press conference, help report on a match, and even feature as a co-host on the show. As if that wasn't enough, you'll also receive an iPhone 8 with a year subscription to Vodafone X Sport, giving you access to 7 dedicated Sky Sports channels. To be with a chance to win, submit your demo tape and your details to offtheball.com/Vodafone X. Look, if you're good at Snapchat or if you're good at Instagram or if you're particularly savvy on social media, you don't have to be a whiz with camera editing and reporting and all that kind of stuff. We're interested in hearing from you anyway. This may well be something for you. Eoin did a read of this yesterday, and we have the supercut of it somewhere, which is going to make an appearance sometime around Christmas.
Well, no, the reason why I had to do a read is because you kept looking down at the screen. So I read it out.
You learned it off.
Well,
you did a great job.
I didn't. I just looked down the barrel of the camera and realised that I hadn't learned it off. So I did it time and time again, forgot my lines time and time again. And there is a supercut that will be rather embarrassing. I can be embarrassed at that. It's not my countryman embarrassing me. It's not my family member embarrassing me. It's me embarrassing me. So
that's fair enough.
Maybe I'll have to put the tricolour away myself.
Going back to the Ross Tucker piece we did a little bit earlier on, could it be the case that up until now running shoe manufacturers were producing shoe designs that prevented the athlete from producing their best, and now this new Nike design has allowed the athlete to run without being hindered? Hashtag OTBAM. It's a good question from Nigel Cleary.
That is food for thought. What would be...
Ross Tucker got back to him and says, I think shoes certainly lie on a spectrum, with some probably worse than barefoot, but the best contemporary shoes, certainly since the 2000s, are already good. If the Nike works as claimed, then it moves good further along the spectrum. So it's about degrees.
What's the name of the Ethiopian winner in 1960 Olympics, Baby Bikila?
Yeah.
Imagine him with the Nike Vaporfly 3%. Would that be a world record time?
Bikila was barefoot, right?
Yeah. In the streets of Rome. That would be an interesting sort of, what would the time be? I presume his time wasn't that great, although when you look at some of the times from the 70s and 80s, they were obviously outrageous, but he was just prior to that.
Well, there's certainly some people run some good stuff. The German team that won the World Cup in 1954, there were a bunch of vials found.
I would say that Germany would be a little bit more advanced than even 6 years later, post Abyssinia, sort of trying to get their act together on the international stage. Maybe they did. Who knows? Stranger things have happened, but 1960 maybe seems a bit too soon.
Meg Crisis on Twitter also says, really excellent Tucker interview. Watched pretty much the whole thing. Agree, especially with the non-elite sporting drug use, i.e. the gym goers. There is poor engagement from the medical community, and with the exception of a few interested parties, most are unaware of how big the problem is. Certainly you hear the stories, you see the bodies wandering around going, well, that's natural. The Brock Lesnar thing about having shits bigger than Conor McGregor, I mean, it's a good line, probably true.
It probably is true, yeah.
His intestines must be huge.
What even happened there? I don't recall.
Better call him out,
that was just nonsensical.
Yeah. Owen and John Duggan have been to a horse auction, Goffs Orby Sales to be exact. Here is how they get on. Have a look.
We're here at Goffs for day 2 of the Orby sale. A lot of potential here in the building, and I don't mean just John Duggan beside me, I mean in terms of top class potential horses here. It is yearlings up for grabs, and there's a lot of money changing hands, John.
Goffs is the gateway to the world for Irish breeders. So we'll have a lot of buyers here from all over the world. Obviously some Irish buyers and some British buyers as well. But like the top lot yesterday was bought by a Dubai businessman who outbid Coolmore from County Tipperary. We had His Highness Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai, was here yesterday. His brother Sheikh Hamdan Al Maktoum, he was here yesterday. We've got buyers from China, we've had buyers from Japan, Australia, across the United States. It's a truly international client base we have here, which is great.
Well, I think it's not just Goffs, but it's Ireland generally. You know, in Ireland we have a long history and a justified reputation of breeding the best racehorses in the world, and Goffs offers the best outlet for those horses in Ireland.
Oh my God, we just saw a horse get sold for €3.2 million. John Duggan, John Nostradamus Duggan, I want to call him, called it lot 318. We'd been told all along that this was going to be the horse of the day. This was the one to watch. But somebody just spent €3.2 million. And it's not just anybody. It's Amir Abdelaziz, who also had the big sale yesterday, or the big purchase yesterday, I should say. He spent €5.2 million in 2 days on 2 horses. So lot number 318, tell us, what did you see? What was the key component that you thought, I'm going for this?
Sexy lady. She is actually. She's got a wonderful walk, you know, she walks like a model, you know, and she's got a nice hip, you know, and that's what you look for when it comes to a filly. She's got a beautiful face and very athletic.
All right, hanging out with the Richies.
Yeah, that's me. Well, he's hanging out with a Richie.
So that full version is going to be available real soon.
Yeah, Friday Night Racing, and available not just on radio but on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're watching us right now, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much all we got time for you this morning. You can catch up on everything throughout the day. Our podcast, we podcast this show. I'm sure a lot of you already are accessing the show on podcast, so if you're one of those listeners, then apologies. But for those of you who don't know, we do podcast the whole thing. It is available pretty much instantaneously around about 9:30 every morning. You can get all your good stuff, and then we separate all the stuff out as well. Keep an eye on our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast, and check out offthewall.com too. The lads are back tonight from 7 o'clock. Aidan O'Shea is going to be on talking with Johnny Ward about, no doubt, the return of James Horan. We'll see you tomorrow, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Until then, good luck.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.